Hey, Shop Talkers, welcome to ShopTalk360 Chat. So stoked to have my very dear friend, Bonnie Canal, join us for this ShopTalk360 Chat. I'm going to totally brag on Bonnie because there's so much to brag on. This woman's amazing. She's the managing partner of the Resiliency Institute. She also received her Master Business Continuity Professional certification from DRI International, and very recently, earlier this year, received the DRI Award of Excellence Program Leader for the year in the nonprofit sector. Bonnie Canal, so great to see your face as always. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Grace, it's great to be here. And as you know, anything for you.
I appreciate it. Every time we get together and chat, this video cast will probably be anywhere from 35 minutes to 45 minutes. We can go on for hours.
Yeah, no kidding.
We just have so much to talk about. And every time I get off the phone with you, Bonnie, I learn so much. So I'm always excited to chat with you. So share a little bit of a quick history of your background with our viewers. Now, you've been in the space of business continuity, resiliency, and disaster recovery, I thought, for decades because of your expertise.
So I am a native New Orleanian. And so like many, we saw Katrina hit, and like many folks thought there had to be a plan for this. And I evacuated to Dallas. It's an usual 7.5-hour drive. It took me 15.5 hours to drive to Dallas. And I stayed in Dallas for 2 months and came back to, New Orleans, as we like to say, a new normal in New Orleans, and just felt like there had to have been a plan because we saw a catastrophic failure, and started to realize that the plans that there were really did fail. So that kind of started me in becoming interested in this. And I have a background in IT. Mm-hmm. So that's how business continuity was introduced to me as a function of IT. We kind of expanded it more into not only disaster recovery, business continuity, but this concept of community resilience, which is my passion. I'm always interested in how can communities continue to thrive in the current circumstances, no matter what those circumstances are. So that's kind of what got me here. And so when I introduce my experience, I talk about the Katrina, Rita, Ike, Gustav, BP oil spill effect, which is kind of where I got my start, boots on the ground on those events. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you've been in that industry for 15 years.
15 years. Yeah, it's 15 years coming up this year on Katrina. So it's our 15 year anniversary.
Mm-hmm. And I know we share a lot on Katrina as well too, because in 2005, I was with a brand, Ann Taylor, and we had stores that were affected. We had employees that were affected. So yeah, we always share on that. Let's jump right into this. I feel like you're the perfect person to speak to because there's just been so much going on. And unfortunately, it's been the perfect storm. We have the COVID-19 coronavirus. We have the economy in turmoil. And we also have the racial and injustices and social unrest. I wanted to chat with you, and let's jump into the pandemic first. So as science and medicine continues to evolve and we continue to learn more about this, although we knew about it earlier this year, I feel like it didn't really actually hit us till March, right? Or correct me if I'm wrong. And then that's when we started taking more initiatives and seeing the spikes. So as this continues to evolve and we're still learning more about it, what are the 3 initiatives individuals can do better at, or just take action to do, to help curb the growing number of cases from your point of view?
Well, Grace, New Orleans was a very early epicenter. I mean, we had Mardi Gras here, and then very shortly thereafter, the COVID cases just exploded. So we actually went into shutdown around St. Patrick's Day. So we've been we're now at, I think it's level 2 or something. I don't know. I mean, so I tell everybody I found Instacart, so I never have to leave my house. So, yesterday is the first day I went and got my hair cut, right? Because I hadn't had my hair cut since March, other than the clippers. And so I think the first thing obviously is wear a mask, right? I mean, that's kind of self-evident, wear a mask. It's important to do that. And so from a physical aspect, respect other people. But Grace, as you and I've talked about, is we're in the beginning of the beginning on this. There is no natural immunity to any human being for this virus. And there's less that we know than we don't know, right? So we don't know more than we know. And so because it's an upper respiratory virus, and we're starting to see, just the other day, CDC released more symptoms to look for. So again, we don't know a lot about this virus, and everyone is susceptible. And again, even if you don't get really sick, you could get sick, or you could share it with someone else. So again, the idea behind this is that to use science as your baseline. Find, if you don't know where to get the information, you can always go to CDC to get the information, WHO, World Health Organization, to find the real data, because that's really, we've got a lot of misinformation out there about what to do. So obviously wear a mask. The other thing is, and Grace and you and I have spoken about this, is understanding that it's a long process, and that there is no, we're doing everything differently. Just the fact that you and I are doing a Zoom call, it is different, right? So I work from home. I don't go to an office anymore. I'm letting my office go because I don't need an office. I'm never going to go there. Who knows? Maybe not until 2022. So we just don't know. So I know I wouldn't go anywhere for the rest of this year. So part of this is understanding that it's a marathon, and in running a marathon, it's different races within a race. So and I'm not a runner and never been a runner. My idea of running was, now it's like to the kitchen or to the bathroom or whatever those rooms are, but
same as mine.
Right. And so I'm thinking about it. I think I should run or something, but it's 9,000 degrees outside, so perhaps not. But the idea is that if you study any kind of long event, or something like a marathon with the multiple races, is your first couple of miles you're getting used to it. Then you're kind of moving to some level of acceptance. Okay, here we are. We're going to do this for a while, and then there's some pain. You may get some pain in something, and then you have to. Then it becomes a little more uncomfortable. Then you're dealing with some pain or discomfort along the way. Then you may move into another place of comfort, and then something else changes. And so the idea of understanding that this is not going to be a straight line, and it's not going to be easy, and that we're just going to have to be patient with the process. And it's my favorite story. A friend of mine told me this years and years and years ago, clinical psychologist, and she said to me, because patience is not my greatest strong suit by any stretch of the imagination, and she said, Bonnie, imagine life as being a ship that's going across the ocean. So you're sailing from England over to the United States, and you want to get there very quickly because you're in a hurry. Running up and down the deck or running around the deck does not get you to New York City any faster.
Yep.
You're going only as fast as the boat goes, and that's it. And so you can either make yourself crazy while you're going, or you can just sit back and enjoy the ride. And if you want to run for you, right? But it's not helping. In other words, it's not going to help you get there faster.
Yeah, and actually, that's a great analogy that you used. And I remember from our last chat we had, you used that for me, because I was freaking a little bit. There's like so much unknowns and uncertainties. And I do refer back to that once in a while. I'm like, okay, chill. Right now, I'm running up and down the deck of the ship. We're not getting there any faster.
Right.
So it's interesting, because I kind of feel like we're in a strange place where there's a lot of concern with not believing. Okay, politicians is one thing, and I don't want to make this a political talk. News media and different news channels, that's another thing. but this is science. I kind of feel like we're in a very strange place, this country, where we don't want to believe science. Do you think there's possibly a denial factor throughout
Yeah.
the whole pandemic?
Yeah.
I just,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand at this point where the cases are continuing to spike now, and by the way, we're being told we're still in the first wave, and I don't know. It's almost kind of like a denial kind of reaction. What are your thoughts on that?
Other than the politics, right? And so because we don't have a consistent message, and messaging is a lot when dealing with any type of disaster or any type of event, the clear, consistent messaging, and it's very, very clear. Step 1, step 2, step 3, do this, don't do that, right? So that's in managing any type of an event like this, the clear messaging. So, but the human nature side of this is it's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to grow old. I'm not going to die. And those are the presumptions in every disaster. And so in talking about the concept of preparedness, you really, people are faced with this fact. And so people don't get prepared. So you and I both live in a hurricane environment. And so we've already had 3 hurricanes, 2 of which have already hit the coast of the United States. That's unheard of right now. I mean, it's unheard of. We're expecting to have a higher than average hurricane season, and the Gulf of Mexico, which is very important for us, is hotter than it's ever been. That's science. That's science. Are people ready? Well, no, because ready is not the nature of a human being. We don't stay in ready. We don't stay in prepared. Humans want to always slip back into that comfort of the normal, right? This is just kind of what we do. And we can adapt to the normal. So the normal is, as we talked about earlier, so now I stay home, and so now I get this started, and this is my new normal. But even within that, as we talked about with the race, there's going to be all of these things that are going to hit us, or challenges that are going to hit us. And I do think that and I can speak only of my own ignorance in pandemics, right? I mean, like anybody, I've been preaching about pandemics for years and saying the one thing that we were never ready for was a pandemic. I've been saying this for 15 years, and so when a pandemic finally hit us, my immediate thought was, well, we'll know how to do this. We're science. I mean, science knows this. We can figure this out. How hard can it be?
Yep.
Well, it's really hard. I didn't know. I mean, I really didn't realize how we're just this small speck on this spinning rock running through a universe that's going around another rock that's going through infinite time that we have no control over, right? So in other words, it's so who we are and what we are so small in the greater scope of life that the knowledge of science that we have is even smaller. So, it doesn't matter whether we believe in COVID or not. It really doesn't. That's the irony of all of this.
Because it's happening.
Right. It doesn't matter, and I mean, look, I got friends, on Facebook, women that I went to high school with that are full deniers. And I chuckle at that because, again, as I say, again, a lot of the science, I'm not a science person. I've learned a lot more than I've ever wanted to know about pandemics. And so I teach now classes on pandemics, so I have to kind of know about them. But again, it's one of these things where the denying doesn't do us any good. And I just saw today an article on CNN about a young man who went to a party. Right. And he had said it was the first time he'd been out in forever. And he went to a party and he got COVID and he died. And he said he regretted going. And then he said that what the article went on to say was there was a person that went who knew they had COVID but were asymptomatic but just felt like they weren't going to share it. And so thus now I think 6 people have it. 1 person's already dead. And those are the kind of things where, for me, wearing a mask, I don't have it. I don't do anything to get it. I'm not exposing myself to it. So I'm confident that I don't have it. However, if I go somewhere out of respect for someone else, I'm going to wear a mask,
Yep.
right? I'm going to make sure that it's part of my civic duty to be a responsible human at this time. And I think this is not about being selfish. Or in any way, it's in every way about being selfish. I want to do the right thing. So it makes me feel better, but I'm doing the right thing for me, which is in turn doing the right thing for you. So, but again, the preparedness is not our nature. So part of this is just allowing the thought of, we're not going to get out of it. I mean, there's no way out but through. And we've had that conversation. There's no way out but through. And
that's a Bonnieism. There's no way out but through. Yep.
Right. And so that's kind of, you can get mad about it and get frustrated about it. And I do. I mean, look, I tell everybody I'm built for this. I mean, this doesn't really bother me, not having to go anywhere. That's great. I mean, not drive my car. My brother has to call me every week to remind me to start it to drive your car, Bonnie.
At the house too. Sure.
Right. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, I think that we've got to really, as I keep telling everyone, we have this, and I've been thinking a lot about this, the fight or flight. And, I am a fighter. And so I step into things as opposed to stepping away from things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that understanding our nature is to go to the opposite of that nature. So as a fight person, every day I wake up and think about how I can retreat from this because I want to fight it. I need to retreat from this. So there's an active, conscious effort in my mind of retreating, where someone who is a flight person perhaps needs to step into this situation every single day. And I think because that's the base human nature, fight or flight, right? And so and everyone knows where they are in this. I mean, that. I mean, everybody knows that. But I know myself clearly, if there's a battle, I'm going to step into it. I'm not afraid of it. That is the warrior spirit in me. I am a fighter from Fighterville.
Mm-hmm.
So part of understanding the word resilience, which has been my focus for 15 years, is what does resilience look like? It is different for every person. And so for me, it's like I said, is the stepping back inward. And I will be quiet, Grace, because and so, but the thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and now we'll talk about, the peaceful protests and COVID and all that's going on, the economy, all of what's going on right now and I don't mean to take anything away from this, but it's this lack of breathing, right? So COVID is an upper respiratory disease.
You just gave me chills.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't breathe. And so now you're looking at people who are losing their jobs, or the sense of economy, we're in a recession that could easily turn into a depression, which is I can't breathe, right? The stress of that, I can't breathe. And then you have the peaceful protests about the absolute injustices that our African-American brothers and sisters face on a daily basis, something that I've really begun to, at a deeper level, synthesize and understand. And it's that literal I can't breathe moment from George Floyd that kind of shocked all of America, right? And if it didn't, that's a whole nother conversation. But this concept of not breathing, and that's really, so for me, it's this, I had to take a step back and recognize the loss of breath in my own life. So to practice breathing, and so to do to go back and I do nightly meditations every night, to spend an hour just breathing, which is, again, that stepping back into myself. Whereas someone else may have to say, from a conscious effort, step into the breathing and to recognize in all the moments in our life that we're not breathing, because there isn't anything else that we can do that would help us more than to become more alive in these moments, as opposed to becoming disenfranchised or disengaged. So now's the time for us as humans to engage with ourselves on a deeper level through breathing, because that's really what makes us human, right? Is the breath. Is, we're water and oxygen. That's what we are. And so we need both. And so again, but to really engage at that DNA level, to become more alive as humans, so that when we come out of this, the other side of this, is we talk about lasting change and lasting justice, we are able to meet that moment. And that's really, I think, for me, the only thing that made sense to me is, how do we meet the moment? How do we come out of this on the other side to meet that moment in time? And I think that we have to decide to be there when that moment comes. And I think for me, it's been important. I mean, I'm hopeful. For me personally, it's life-changing and life-altering. And anybody that knows me knows I'm all about that, right? I mean, I've done many journeys. I've done a lot of things into this, into the quest of life, as I like to call it. The journey. I'm like Kane from Kung Fu. I wander the earth. That's all it's not all I care about. It's what I care about. But for me, it's really important. In 2022, it doesn't matter. In the future, that if I'm alive when that moment comes, that I meet that moment. And part of that is I have to do that now every day. And so, but that's kind of my new thought, Grace. And I wanted to share that with you because we've had these conversations in the past, and
Absolutely.
I thought, we've talked about it, and I kind of thought about it, and that's what I thought you of all people would appreciate that.
No, I definitely do. And you do take it to a much more deeper spiritual meaning with all three of these issues going on. And it's all, and when it comes down to it, it's about breathing. It's about the breath. So, wow, that's pretty deep. I feel like there was a lot of tweetable moments and everything you said. I might go back and quote you on some of that stuff. That is very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. Now, so as we go through this, because we got to go through it, right? As we go through it, and there's the push to reopen businesses for the economy. And of course, that's also adding some sort of new normalcy for everyone as we continue to go through this. It's probably going to be, at first there were hopes that was going to be like a V economy. I think that's out the door. So it's probably going to be up and down until we get our arms around coronavirus more. So at the end of the day, do you feel that what we're currently doing and our approach, do you feel that we're continuing to risk lives to save the economy or to try to get the economy going? Or do you feel that the economy is more at risk for long-term over the number of deaths involved, since there has been data that the flu has had a higher mortality rate and cases overall? I just wanted to kind of get your feel on that.
I think it's tough, Grace. I get both sides. I mean, you get both sides of the equation, right? And so, the challenge.
Both.
And so the thing of it is that for like people like myself who've done the right thing. We've gone out only when necessary. We've stayed in only when necessary. You're right. Socially distant. I've worn a mask. Now I have a fashion accessory, bunches of masks. I keep buying them because I figure one day I'm gonna have to wear them if I go out. And I don't think there are any easy answers on that, right? I think that many places have opened too soon. Now, New Orleans has, because our mayor has been very aggressive with this, very aggressive. And we have a lot of tests, free tests all the time. So we're in a different bubble in the city of New Orleans. We're starting to see our numbers rise in the state of Louisiana, but the state of Louisiana is more southern than New Orleans is considered southern, right? Except for the climate. I think that, there has to be a mix between that. And so when you're talking about, or when one's talking about businesses reopening, what are you talking about? I mean, it's one of these things where I saw yesterday people were protesting in Austin, Texas about bars reopening. I'm thinking, and I feel for the bar owners, right? I mean, that's kind of something that's like printing money, owning a bar in the South or anywhere, but owning a bar. And it's just not safe to go to a bar. And so, but what does that person do? And so, because you can't say, do your job differently, right? So do what you do differently. You can't have a virtual bar because that doesn't do you any good. You can't do a, takeaway bar. I mean, we do in New Orleans, we have takeaway everything, but you can't do that. So, part of this is to recognize that, and this is what I'm talking about when I said we weren't ready for the pandemic, is that the economy is based on the lack of spread. I mean, that's kind of what it is that if you want to have a recovery in this or any semblance of a normal-ish behavior where it's still social distancing and face coverings and things like that, the number has to go down. I mean, that's kind of it. That's science will tell you that. And so until we get a better control of the spreading of the disease, then we're going to be stuck in this constant state of
back and forth.
Yeah, it's horrible. And what it's doing, and all the economists have said this, is that if we didn't stop it the first time, the second shutdown is going to be worse. And we're not even, we're in our first wave. When you put flu on top of this, I mean, that's really what people are worried about, is the fall and the winter's flu. What is that? I mean, again, we just don't know. I mean, they're projecting over 200,000 deaths. I mean, think about that. I know we kind of lost track of the number of deaths because it's just ridiculous amount of people, but that's somebody's mother, somebody's father, somebody's grandmother, somebody's brother or sister or cousin, uncle. It doesn't matter. It's somebody that mattered to somebody. And if that means I stay home and wear a mask, or if I go out, wear a mask, then I'm going to do it, so there are no easy answers. And, part of it is figuring out, each community kind of needs to do that. But in all fairness, and this isn't a political statement, leadership does start at the top. It starts, and I say this, even if I was running a major corporation, leadership starts at the top. So if I was a CEO of a company, you still look to the CEO for direction. We all do. That's kind of what it is. And so we look to our federal government, who is the only resource. They can print money. They can do all kind of things. And so they're the only ones that can solve this on a national basis. This 50-state recovery effort, no matter what, is not going to be good enough. It's just not. And so, that's what FEMA was made for. That's what the CDC was made for. We have organizations built in the federal government that can respond to this in a way that make good sense. And they can, and they haven't. There's just no other way to put it. They just haven't. We're suffering because of that.
I agree with you, and again, not to politicize things, because things get easily politicized, but the bottom line is this: I kind of feel that the governors were kind of left to their own devices for the protective personal gear, as well as for ventilators at one point, as well as even like, okay, yeah, you guys figure it out when you can open, when you think it's safe to open. And it's hard because then there are so many varying approaches, even though everyone's following certain CDC guidelines. I think if there was more of a uniformed approach and just more general buy-in, that then we truly are in this together. And it's weird because like on LinkedIn and other social media, you see posts, hey, early on, we're in this together, and I always kind of felt this is horrible, but I always kind of felt no, we're not in this together. Because there's two schools of thoughts. There's people that believe it, and there's people that don't believe it. That think it's some sort of a conspiracy theory. At what point is all this enough? At what point are we really going to hunker down as a country?
Yeah. Well, and Grace, that's, I that was something that I learned. It was really kind of interesting after Katrina, And I can remember, after Katrina, we used to go stand in line for something. It didn't matter where it was. It was 2 hours. We talk about this, you go to the grocery 2 hours, you go to the post office 2 hours, you go get gas, it was 2 hours. Everything was 2 hours. It didn't matter. So lesson one is New Orleanians learned how to stand in line. And being friendly folk, we would turn to your person behind you in line and say, how you made out. And which was, how, for us, that means, how did you do with Katrina? How was the storm? How are you doing today? And there really was, at that time, a sense of connectivity between the city, where, because we were victims of, and people looked at us as stupid, for living here, and they saw everyone saw those images and saw looting and all this other stuff, and blamed us for what happened to us. So it's that same kind of pull, right? The same kind of us versus them mentality, that the New Orleanians felt a strong camaraderie with ourselves. And, the conversation was, even after this, to have whether we should have Mardi Gras or not. And Mardi Gras is something that that we do for ourselves. It's a party we have for ourselves that we invite the world. I mean, that's really what Mardi Gras is. And there was a consensus that, yes, we should have Mardi Gras because we don't care about anybody else. We need Mardi Gras. But then I talk about what I call the unintended consequences of money. And when recovery money started to come in, it turned from how you made out to where's mine. And I think that's human nature, is we can only stay in this camaraderie for a small period of time without, again, this conscious effort of staying connected, because America is such a bootstraps place. America really is this individualism, where we have this pride of individualism above and beyond all other countries. It's fascinating to me, where you didn't build this, or I built this by myself, or whatever, all of those things that we saw through our political systems. And for us, we have to continue to remember that, we are in this together. I mean, everything about my life, even if I don't see anybody or talk to anybody in a day, there's somebody doing something that allows me the opportunity that I don't have to do that.
Absolutely.
So, and I think that, part of this, that's what I'm saying, is to really think about this differently, and to embrace the humanness and the frailties of humanness in this, and saying, we're only, if you want to make out alive, because, and again, we're not going to get out of this deal alive anyway, right? That's kind of how life is. You come in and
irony of it all, right?
Right. I mean, that's it. There's a ticket in, and you get it punched in, and you get it punched out. That's just that's the rule. If you don't want to get it punched out in this time, right? If this is not the way you want to go, then there are things you need to do, and things that we know we can do to help us in that process. And I think that's really has to be where we have to start to put our minds, is starting to recognize that, and recognize that we are in this together. And as a species, that we have an incredible opportunity to redefine who we are as a species.
Oh, absolutely.
Humanity.
Sure.
And we've done as Americans, is arrogant and is egotistical. And look, I'm a proud American. Like, I don't ever pretend to be a Canadian when I go places. I'm an American. I mean, that's what I am. And I vote in every election. So, but as a proud American, the arrogance of us as a young country, this is really going to be one of the first major disasters to hit us in a very long time on our own soil since the Civil War. So where other countries are longer or older and have more history of destruction in pandemics or all of this stuff, they understand this more intimately than we do. We have an incredible opportunity to learn from this. Hopefully we do. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the generation behind, the two generations that are behind me, we're not leaving them a whole lot to work with, unfortunately.
Yeah. On the subject of racial,
the peaceful protest.
Peaceful protest, yes, racial injustices and
right.
inequalities out there. And also, too, I want to bring up that there is a disproportionate number of COVID cases and deaths related and affected to the Black community. If you had one word to describe your thoughts on the current racial inequalities and social unrest, what's your one word and why?
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful.
That's that's a good word.
And honestly, the one thing that this has allowed me the opportunity to do is to really learn about white privilege. And really, so I am what we call a very typical white upper middle class woman from New Orleans, right? So I'm a woman of a certain age, white, upper middle class, had access to all things. And I actually know history, study history. I'm not one of those, I can have a long conversation about history all the time. And a lot of the stuff that, I'm in that percentage where they probably said, in 2015, Black Lives Matter. Yes, they do. Understood. And I tell everybody this, when I first heard that, my first visceral reaction was that, well, wait a minute, don't all lives matter? And that was my visceral reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and then what I had to do was listen to the rest of the sentence, to that. Was until my African American or my Black brothers and sisters, until their lives matter too, then all lives don't matter. So you can't make one blanket statement and say that all lives matter if all lives really don't matter. And by saying Black Lives Matter is simply pointing out the fact that in all fairness, they don't. And I'm not saying that they don't. I'm saying that's what's happening in society today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, one of the lessons that I had this conversation actually the other day with a friend of mine. I was talking about, I don't know what it's like to walk into a store as an African American woman, and have that look,
Mm-hmm.
of you're going to steal from me, or are you going to hurt me, or bringing in my nephew who's 6'4", and have them look at him like he's a murderer. That look that African Americans get, that white people just don't get that look, and so I think that what we have to do is recognize, and this is really, recognize the history of our country.
Mm-hmm.
And understand the original sin of our country is slavery. And
Absolutely.
and that is, we've built our country on the backs of African Americans. And when we had a chance to make it right, we didn't. We just simply didn't. And so it's what that looks like in the future. I don't know. I don't know. It's above my pay grade. It's a conversation it's not that I would enjoy being a part of. But I think that what we see in the hopefulness is that, Grace, today, there are people still out there. People are still out there. They're still marching. They're still saying, we're not going to stop until this stops.
Mm-hmm.
And until we make substantial changes. So this is not just, we're going to protest until the news is off. The news is off, but people are still out there. And I look at this as kind of like what happened for the Vietnam War, where these students just kept going and going.
Mm-hmm.
And, people supported them. Then they were vilified. But they kept going and they kept going, and it kept getting bigger and bigger until finally, we got out of the Vietnam War. And so I think that the youth of today has the same opportunity that the youth of the 1960s did. My only hope is that they don't fall short as the youth of the 1960s did, right? They went off and became, the conservatives of today, right? They've forgotten, in my opinion, the baby boomers are forgotten from whence they've come. And so, again, I think it's hopeful for tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, because we're finally having different conversations. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, Grace, to me, I always say that in all of this, we're not asking the right questions. And that to me is the most important thing, is we talk about in computers, garbage in, garbage out, right? And so you can, a lot of times, even if on a survey, people will ask you a question. It's like, well, that's not really the question. It's like, are you a Republican or a Democrat? Well, that's not the right question, right? Or am I for Trump or against Trump? I mean, we think in terms of black and white because it's the duality of our brain.
Mm-hmm.
But in that duality, the fabric of society is more, it's broader in its context. And so I think that in understanding what's going on, and that's where, to me, this idea of community resilience from the ground up makes all the difference in the world, is to allow communities to really begin to build their own social fabric, to really understand who they are as a community, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, community by community, which then, again, part of the concerns are what we've been talking about is this hyper-focused local economy. How do you do a hyper-focused local economy where our economy is not based on things coming from a supply chain, which is at best tedious? I mean, or it's sitting on the brink of failure. And that's something that we all, if you look at a larger scope, in many ways, the president is exactly right when he talks about, supply chains, things coming from China or things like that. I mean, I'm not saying you need to rebuild manufacturing, but we do need to rethink the way things are done. And so again, this hyper-focused local economy. So by building that block by block, community by community, I think that's what the protests are about, is to have people that are disengaged become engaged, in what I call citizenry, to be a citizen in your community.
Mm-hmm.
And citizenry comes with responsibility. It's not just sitting along the side of the fence and making comments as people go by. It's being active, but it's to say to people, you need to be active, but there's no place for you, or you do not feel welcome, is part of the challenge. And that's where I think when you look at the privilege of folks like myself have had, is to say, there's not a party that I don't feel like I'm not invited to. So part of what I have to do is say, wait a minute, there's people that may not feel invited to my party, or there's maybe parties I need to feel like I need to be invited to.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of that is by building this concept, and there are, and again, that's the work that I'm getting into, is this really idea of in processes. I mean, it's not like, people, obviously I'm a bit of a dreamer, but you need to have tactile things that we can do to really build this idea of a community network, neighborhood by neighborhood, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, that allows people the opportunity to have a say in where they're going and have a say in their future. And that's really, if you're looking at, so that's how we meet that moment in taking what the protesters are saying, this idea of disenfranchisement, to give them a voice in their future. You take the COVID pandemic and you say, what does 2021, 22, what do we, because 2021, what does 2021, 2022 look like? How do we meet that moment from an economic perspective, as well as, managing of a pandemic? And then, as we talked about, obviously, with this from an economic perspective as well, right? So how do you bring this together? And I think that's where to build the systems that we need to get there, it starts with ourselves. So you start with yourself and say, I have to get ready for the moment. And once we're ready for the moment, now we start bringing those like minds together and using very clear-cut examples that have been set out since the early 1970s, processes and procedures that we can do to engage our neighbors and our friends into the conversation of community resilience, of community activism, and making the changes that are needed to happen. And so instead of hearing, defund the police, I don't know what that means, but the real, right, but I mean, I know exactly what it means. But again, part of this is that, so if you want to reallocate money, what does that look like?
Yep.
Where are you going to reallocate it to? Yep. We've kind of given over the role of leadership to our government, to our lives, to our government, and understanding that that's not the government's job. And again, the government, in many ways, we look to our government, we look in our particular case to our city council or to our mayor, and we yell at them. We yell at them, oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. We yell at our state and federal government, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. Well, what are you doing? What am I doing, right? Yep. So I'm yelling at you, but what am I doing? Well, I don't want to pay taxes because it's too much, right? I'm not going to pay any taxes. I don't want to vote. I built it myself, so I'm not interested in the infrastructure. I'm not going to engage with my neighbors or try to do something. I'm going to sit in my house with my gun and yell at people as they go by, right? I'm that crazy lady now. So I think that all of this is happening to say that the trajectory of that is incorrect from a human perspective. We need to look in a different way and say, we need to step out of that. That's not helpful, right? It's not going to help us. And so what's the other way? There is another way. And the other way is understanding that we are all in this together. And while democracy is hard and it's ugly and it's painful and everybody gets a vote kind of thing, it is the best system on the planet. And so but we've become lazy in that as Americans, fat and lazy, and I mean that literally. And so we have to take our citizenry back and own it individually, and that way we pull our government back to us. Instead of yelling at our elected officials, we become our elected officials. We give them the information because they work for us. And I mean that, figuratively, right? And I can't go fire the mayor, but the mayor will do, I always say, if you want to get a politician to do what you want them to do, then you put together a good movement and they'll follow you. I mean, that's kind of what it does. The politician, the mayor, while they lead, it's their job. They come with ideas, but they only come with ideas because they're elected to have ideas. And so they can't do, this is my last thing, is that we had a mayor who wanted to do some infrastructure work, and not this mayor, a mayor before this. And I would talk to him, and there's such a thing. So we needed some drainage systems done. And he looked at it, and the situation was, he felt he was going to build these culverts for the citizens of New Orleans, because we have flooding problems. So it was great. We're going to help you. We're doing this for you. Well, as the process is always, over budget, behind time, structural challenges, blah, blah, blah. The 4 came 2, right? So he was doing it for them. Now the people that he was doing it for felt that it was being done to them, right? So now they move. So now they're mad. You're not doing this for me. You're doing it to me. Look, my street's torn up. Look at what you've done to my house. Yep. My business is closed. What are you talking about? He did not do with, because had he gone in this with from the beginning and got them along the way, because if there was over budget behind, if you move people with you in the process, then they're along for the ride. Then they're part of the solution. So we look at, and 4 is our government. It's never 4. It's got to be with. And that's when I'm saying you're asking the wrong questions. And so by saying, how can we do this together? How do we do this together? We might not like all the answers. And, you'll get some crazy, that's fine. And I'm one of those crazy answers, but at least we're with.
Yeah, we're with, and the discussion is happening.
That's exactly right.
Are happening. Yep.
Right. And that's the only way out. I mean, that is the only way out, is with each other. And so the questions are, how do we do that? What does that look like? How do we begin to start to move in this direction? And, I don't think we're ready for that yet. I think we still have, there's still, it's hot, summer, but in the fall, I think we're going to start to see it's going to get worse. And I think people are going to be shoved back with their backs against the wall. And we're going to have to start to begin to really start asking some very hard questions. I really, and again, part of it is, what are we going to do with our kids? How do we send our kids to school?
With school, sure. That's a whole other discussion.
Well, yeah, right.
Wow. Well, Bonnie, always so great to chat with you.
No, my pleasure, Grace.
Always appreciate your time. And you see, I learned something else. Just having chatted now, I like the, what government's doing to you or for you. It's actually with, it's with. It's never to, it's never for.
Well, that's from a leadership. That's how we have to lead. I mean, if you're in a leadership position, no matter where you are in the role that whatever one finds oneself, right? So it is always to reach across with hand out, right? It's my job. It is my job to have my hand out. It's my job, literally, to have my arms open, my heart open. If I want to work with someone, it's not about coming to me. It's how can I come to you? And there's great strength in that vulnerability. And anybody will tell you that it's harder to be vulnerable than it is to be strong, to be that strong pound on the chest. Sure. It's harder to be in that present moment and to be vulnerable to that moment. And we've got to break that down. I mean, that's the only place left we have. I mean, there isn't we're in a global, we've always been, one species, as humanity. I'm not talking about all the birds and, plants and all of that, but as a humanity, we're one species. That's it. I mean, there is no other species other than the humans, right? And so we have to learn to get along. I mean, what is that? We're going to kill you because you have different nationality? I mean, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean,
yeah, and it's happened.
It happens it happens on your own street corner. I've shot you because of whatever reason, So, I mean, humans are violent and creatures violent. I mean, for no reason violent. I've yet to figure that out. But, again, there is no other way out. I mean, and I've looked at it from 10,000 different angles. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas, I'd love to hear them, but I don't know any other way out. And for me, that's the way that I'm going. And that's what I said to anybody. I'm going this way. If you want to come. If you think I'm a lunatic, I had this conversation last night with a very good friend of mine, who tells everybody, excuse me, I'm batshit crazy, and I'm like, okay, I'm totally, I got it. I am. All right. But I'm still going that way. Come or not. That's where I'm going. So, you find me out there. If you want to come, I'll be out there. Look for me. I'll wave. Come on with me.
Bonnie, I will always come with. Always such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very, very busy day, especially with everything that you're doing now with our current situations. But always great chatting with you. And I look forward to a follow-up discussion.
Yep, anytime.
Yeah, and we'll go forward from there. Thank you so much.
Stay safe. Wash your hands. Stay safe.
I will. Do a quick shout out if you don't mind. If people want to reach out to you, they can reach you at?
Oh, it's just Bonnie Canal at the ResiliencyInstitute.com. A lot of words, but the ResiliencyInstitute.com, Bonnie Canal.
Great. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Take care, great. Be good.
Thank you.
Wash your hands.